The wind never stopped moving across the great desert. Day after day, year after year, waves of golden sand rolled across the land like an endless ocean. Ancient dunes rose as high as mountains, while the blazing sun turned the horizon into a shimmering sea of light. Travelers who crossed the desert often spoke of strange sounds carried by the wind. Some claimed they heard distant bells, others swore they saw tall towers appearing in the heat before vanishing again. Most people dismissed these stories as desert illusions. But among the nomadic tribes, one legend had survived for generations. They spoke of a magnificent city buried beneath the sand, a city so rich that its streets glittered in the sunlight and its temples were covered with gold. They believed the city had not been destroyed by war but swallowed by the desert itself after a catastrophe that changed the land forever. The elders called it the Hidden City. Parents told the story around evening campfires. Grandparents warned children never to search for it, saying the desert protected its greatest secret. Treasure hunters laughed at the tale, while scholars argued that no evidence had ever been found. As centuries passed, the legend slowly faded into myth. Far away inside the National Museum of Ancient Civilizations, Dr. Amara Kofi carefully brushed dust from a weathered stone tablet recently recovered from an abandoned caravan route. She had spent years studying forgotten African trade routes, ancient kingdoms, and civilizations that history had almost erased. Unlike many historians, Amara believed that not every great civilization had been discovered. She often wondered how many cities still lay hidden beneath forests, mountains, rivers, or deserts, waiting for someone patient enough to find them. One quiet afternoon, while examining the tablet under a bright lamp, she noticed a series of tiny symbols carved into one corner. At first, they seemed like ordinary decorations, but the pattern repeated several times. Curious, she compared the symbols with old manuscripts stored deep inside the museum archives. Hours turned into days. Days turned into weeks. Finally, one evening, she found a perfect match. The symbols were not decorations at all. They formed an ancient map. Her heart raced as she carefully copied every mark onto paper. The map showed an old caravan route that disappeared into one of the most dangerous deserts on Earth. Near the end of the route was a single symbol unlike any she had ever seen, a large circle surrounded by 8 towers. Beside it was an inscription written in an ancient language. After translating it, Amara whispered the words aloud. "When the sun rises between the twin mountains, the sleeping city shall reveal its gate." She sat in silence. Could this be the first real clue to the legendary hidden city? The next morning, Amara presented her findings to a panel of respected historians and archaeologists. She explained the map. She showed the symbols. She translated the ancient inscription. When she finished, the room was silent. Then someone laughed. One professor shook his head. "Legends are not evidence," he said. Another smiled politely. "If such a city ever existed, someone would have found it centuries ago." Others agreed. The meeting ended with little support. Most believed Amara was chasing a fairy tale. Although disappointed, she refused to give up. That evening, she returned to her office and spread every document across a large table. She studied satellite image, old trade records, and forgotten travel journals. The more she compared them, the more convinced she became that they all pointed toward the same region of the desert. There had to be something hidden there. The following week, she contacted people she trusted. The first was Professor Elias Morgan, a historian who specialized in ancient civilizations. Though skeptical, he respected Amara's determination. "If you are wrong," he told, "we will waste weeks crossing empty sand." "And if I'm right?" she asked. Elias smiled. "Then history will never be the same." Next, she met Malik Hassan, a seasoned desert guide whose family had crossed the Great Desert for generations. When Amara showed him the copied map, his expression changed. "My grandfather told me about this symbol," he said quietly, pointing to the circle surrounded by 8 towers. "He said it marked the place where the desert keeps its greatest secret." Amara looked at him in surprise. "You believe the story?" Malik nodded slowly. "I believe every legend begins with a grain of truth." Soon Zara, a brilliant engineer, joined the team. She brought advanced ground scanning equipment capable of detecting buried structures deep beneath the sand. Captain Idris, a calm and experienced security leader, agreed to protect the expedition. He understood that remote deserts could be as dangerous as any battlefield. Within a month, the team was complete. Trucks were loaded with food, water, fuel, scientific equipment, cameras, medical supplies, and communication devices. Every member understood the risks. They would be traveling into one of the harshest environments on Earth. where temperatures could become deadly and sandstorms could erase entire camps in minutes. On the morning of their departure, the sun slowly rose above the horizon. The engines started. The convoy rolled away from the city. Behind them, civilization disappeared. Ahead lay thousands of kilometers of endless sand and perhaps the greatest archaeological discovery in history. As the vehicles climbed the first towering dune, Malik looked toward the distant horizon. "The desert remembers everything," he said quietly. Amara tightened her grip on the ancient map. Somewhere beneath the endless sea of sand, a forgotten city was waiting. And their journey had only just begun. The first 3 days of the journey were peaceful. The convoy of 4 rugged expedition vehicles rolled steadily across the vast desert. Endless golden dunes stretched in every direction, interrupted only by rocky hills and the occasional cluster of dry shrubs struggling to survive under the scorching sun. During the day, the heat was almost unbearable. The air shimmered above the sand, creating strange mirages that looked like distant lakes and ancient buildings. At night, the desert became surprisingly cold, the sky filled with countless stars brighter than any the team had ever seen. Each evening, the team gathered around a small campfire. Malik shared stories passed down through generations of desert nomads. "My grandfather always said," he began one night, "the desert hides only what it believes the world is not ready to find." Professor Elias smiled politely. "Or perhaps the desert simply buries everything." Everyone laughed, but Amara remained focused on the ancient map spread across her lap. The symbols continued to match the landmarks they passed. They were heading in the right direction. On the 5th morning, the landscape began to change. The smooth dunes gave way to rocky cliffs and narrow valleys carved by rivers that had disappeared thousands of years earlier. As the convoy climbed a steep ridge, Sahara suddenly spoke over the radio. "Everyone stop." The vehicles came to a halt. She stepped outside carrying a portable scanner. "There is something unusual beneath us." The team gathered around as the scanner displayed faint underground shapes. Long straight lines. Perfect angles. Stone walls. Captain Idris frowned. "Natural." Zara shook her head. "No, nature does not build like this." Excitement spread through the group. They spent hours digging, hoping to uncover the structure. Instead, they found only the top of a weathered stone pillar buried beneath several meters of sand. Ancient symbols covered its surface. Amara carefully brushed away the sand. The carvings matched the symbols on the map. Her heart raced. "We are getting closer." The expedition continued deeper into the desert. By the 7th day, dark clouds appeared on the horizon. Malik's expression changed immediately. "We have to move." "Why?" asked Elias. Malik pointed toward the growing wall of dust. "Sandstorm." Within minutes, powerful winds slammed into the convoy. Sand filled the air so completely that the vehicles could barely see a few meters ahead. Captain Idris ordered everyone to secure the equipment. The team tied down tents, covered the scanners, and sealed every vehicle. Then the storm struck with full force. The roaring wind sounded like thunder. Sand hammered against the trucks for hours. No one slept. Inside her vehicle, Amara held the ancient map tightly, praying it would survive. Finally, just before sunrise, the storm began to fade. When everyone stepped outside, they stood in stunned silence. The desert had changed completely. The entire dunes had vanished. New ridges had appeared. It looked like they had entered a different world. As the team reorganized their supplies, Malik climbed a nearby hill. Suddenly he shouted, "Come quickly." Everyone rushed toward him. Half buried beneath the freshly shifted sand stood the broken remains of enormous stone statues. Each statue was nearly 10 meters tall. Though badly damaged, they still wore carved crowns unlike anything the team had ever seen. Professor Elias stared in amazement. "I have never seen this civilization recorded anywhere." Amara carefully examined the base of one statue. More ancient writing. This time the translation was clearer. "Beyond the 8 guardians lies the city of eternal light." The team exchanged excited glances. 8 guardians. The ancient map had shown a city surrounded by 8 towers. Could these statues be the guardians mentioned in the inscription? That afternoon, Zara launched a drone high above the desert. The camera scanned the landscape for kilometers. At first there was nothing. Then faint outlines began to appear beneath the sand. Long straight formations, perfect squares, circular foundations, roads. The drone's scanner highlighted dozens of buried structures stretching far into the distance. The entire area was hiding something enormous. This is not just one building, Zara whispered. It's an entire city. A wave of excitement swept through the team. For centuries, people had dismissed the legend as a myth. Now the evidence was appearing before their eyes. But they were not alone. Several kilometers away, hidden behind towering dunes, another group watched the expedition through powerful binoculars. Their leader lowered the binoculars slowly. His name was Victor Kane, a wealthy treasure hunter with a reputation for stealing priceless artifacts from ancient sites around the world. He smiled coldly. So, the legend is true. One of his men asked quietly. What do we do now? Victor folded his arms. We let them find the city. And when they do, we take everything. Far across the silent desert, Dr. Amara Kofi had no idea they were being followed. As the sun disappeared behind the endless dunes, the expedition prepared for another night. The stars slowly appeared overhead. Somewhere beneath the sand beneath their feet, a forgotten civilization had waited for thousands of years. And by the next sunrise, the first hidden entrance would finally reveal itself. The sun rose slowly over the endless sea of sand. Its golden light stretched across the desert, casting long shadows over the ancient stone statues the expedition had discovered the day before. The air was cool and still, but everyone in the camp felt the same excitement. Today could change history forever. Dr. Amara Kofi stood beside the largest statue, holding the ancient map in one hand and studying the horizon. She remembered the words carved into the stone. When the sun rises between the twin mountains, the sleeping city shall reveal its gate. She looked toward the east. Far in the distance stood two rocky mountains separated by a narrow valley. As the sun climbed higher, its rays passed perfectly between the peaks and illuminated a single spot on the desert floor. There, Amara said, pointing. The team quickly loaded their equipment and drove toward the glowing area. After nearly an hour, they arrived. At first, it looked like nothing more than another stretch of sand. But Zara unpacked her ground-penetrating scanner and slowly walked across the area. The screen suddenly lit up. Everyone gathered around. Beneath the sand lay enormous stone walls, wide staircases, massive pillars, and something even more astonishing, a gigantic circular structure. Can't be, Professor Elias whispered. It is, Zara replied. We are standing on top of it. Captain Idris immediately ordered the team to begin digging. Shovels struck the sand. Small excavation machines carefully removed layer after layer. Hours passed under the burning sun. Then, clang. One shovel hit solid stone. The entire team froze. Carefully brushing away the sand, they uncovered a beautifully carved stone staircase leading downward into darkness. Every step was perfectly preserved. Ancient symbols decorated both sides of the staircase. Amara knelt and gently cleaned one of the carvings. She smiled. It is the same writing. Professor Elias leaned closer. What does it say? Amara translated slowly. Only those who seek wisdom shall enter. Silence filled the desert. For centuries, the entrance had slept beneath the shifting sands. Now it has been found. The team continued clearing the staircase until they reached an enormous bronze door. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Nearly 15 feet high, the door was covered with intricate carvings of kings, scholars, farmers, builders, and explorers. Instead of celebrating war, the artwork celebrated learning, cooperation, and prosperity. At the center was a giant sun surrounded by 8 towers. The same symbol from the ancient map. There is no doubt now, Amara whispered. We've found the hidden city. Captain Idris examined the entrance carefully. No traps that I can see. Zara inspected the hinges. After all these centuries, they are still intact. Using hydraulic lifting equipment, the team slowly pushed against the massive door. At first, nothing happened. Then, a deep rumble echoed beneath the desert. Dust drifted from the ancient stone walls. The heavy bronze doors slowly began to move. Everyone held their breath. Light from the desert spilled into a darkness that had remained untouched for thousands of years. As the opening widened, a cool breeze flowed upward from deep underground. carried no smell of decay. Instead, the air felt fresh, almost as though the city had been waiting. Captain Idris switched on his flashlight. Its beam disappeared into a long stone corridor stretching into the darkness. The walls were lined with beautiful carvings. Gold-colored decorations still shimmered beneath centuries of dust. "This place is incredible," Zara whispered. Amara took the first careful step inside. One by one the others followed. Their footsteps echoed through the silent passage. After several minutes of walking, the corridor opened into a gigantic underground chamber. Everyone stopped. No one spoke. Before them stood towering stone columns reaching toward a ceiling nearly 100 feet above. Massive statues guarded every entrance. Ancient murals covered the walls telling stories of a thriving civilization. Colorful paint still remained protected from the sun for countless generations. Professor Elias removed his glasses and wiped his eyes. "I never imagined." Amara smiled. "Neither did I." As they explored further, Zara noticed something remarkable. "Look." She pointed toward the ceiling. Small openings allowed thin beams of sunlight to reach the chamber. The underground city had been designed to capture natural daylight. It was an engineering masterpiece, Zara said. They understood architecture far beyond their time. Suddenly Malik stopped walking. He pointed toward the dusty floor. "There are footprints." Everyone looked down. Fresh footprints. Not ancient ones. Someone had entered the city recently. Captain Idris immediately raised his hand. "Stay alert." The excitement was replaced by caution. Who could have reached this hidden place before them? Unknown to the expedition, Victor Kane and his treasure hunters had quietly watched the entrance from the top of a distant dune. They had waited patiently until the Amara's team opened the ancient gate. Now they smiled. Victor adjusted his binoculars. "They have done the difficult work for us." One of his men grinned. "When do we move?" Victor's eyes remained fixed on the underground entrance. "Not yet. Let them discover the treasures first. Then, we will take everything." Deep below the desert, unaware they were being followed, Amara's team continued exploring the magnificent underground halls. At the far end of the chamber stood another enormous doorway. Unlike the first entrance, this one was made entirely of polished black stone. Above it was a single inscription. Amara carefully translated the ancient words. "Beyond this gate lies the heart of Azurim." She slowly looked back at her team. "I think we are about to enter the city itself." The ancient black doors stood silently before them. Behind them lay secrets that had remained hidden for thousands of years. And somewhere in those silent streets, the greatest discovery in history was waiting. The massive black stone doors stood silently before the expedition. No one spoke. Every member of the team understood they were standing on the edge of one of the greatest discoveries in human history. Captain Idris stepped forward and carefully inspected the ancient doorway. "There are no signs of damage," he said. "Whatever lies beyond these doors has remained untouched for thousands of years." Zara placed her hands on the polished stone. "There must be a mechanism." She examined every carving until she noticed a circular stone engraved with the same symbol that had appeared on the ancient map, a golden sun surrounded by 8 towers. She gently pressed it. A deep rumble echoed through the underground chamber. Dust drifted from the ceiling as hidden gears silent for centuries slowly came to life. The enormous doors moved apart. Cool air flowed through the opening. Then the darkness gave way to light. The explorers stepped forward and stopped in complete amazement. Before them stretched an entire city. Wide stone streets disappeared into the distance. Beautiful homes stood in neat rows, their carved walls still decorated with colorful murals. Tall towers reached toward shafts of sunlight streaming through natural openings high above. Magnificent temples, peaceful gardens, and graceful stone bridges crossed crystal-clear canals that still carried fresh water. The city looked as though its people had simply vanished yesterday. Professor Elias could hardly breathe. "This is impossible." Amara smiled. "No," she whispered. "It's history." The team slowly walked through the silent streets. Every building revealed another wonder. Market squares were filled with perfectly preserved clay pots, woven baskets, and bronze tools. Large workshops contained blacksmiths' furnaces, pottery wheels, and woodworking benches exactly where their owners had left them. Nothing had been disturbed. It was as if time itself had stood still. Zara carefully examined the underground canals. The water is still flowing. She followed the channels until they reached a massive stone reservoir. Ancient engineers had built an incredible system of tunnels that collected rainwater from the mountains above and carried it throughout the city. Could have supplied thousands of people, she said. Captain Idris nodded with admiration. This civilization understood engineering far beyond its time. As they continued exploring, Malik noticed rows of fruit trees growing beneath openings in the ceiling. Sunlight poured through carefully placed shafts, allowing gardens to flourish underground. Birds flew among the branches. Flowers bloomed beside quiet pools of water. "It feels alive," Malik said softly. Amara looked around. They planned for everything. The deeper they explored, the more extraordinary the city became. One enormous building stood above all the others. Its entrance was guarded by 12 giant stone lions. Golden doors reflected the sunlight. "This must be the royal palace," Professor Elias said. Inside, polished stone floors stretched across magnificent halls. Beautiful columns decorated with gold reached toward painted ceilings. Huge windows allowed sunlight to fill every room. At the center of the palace stood an empty throne carved from a single block of black stone. Unlike many royal thrones, it was simple. Behind it, ancient words were carved into the wall. Amara translated them slowly. "A ruler's greatest treasure is not gold but the trust of the people." The room fell silent. "This kingdom measured greatness differently," Elias said. "It valued wisdom above wealth." Nearby, they discovered another remarkable chamber. Shelves carved into the walls held hundreds of clay tablets carefully arranged in perfect order. Each one contained records of laws, trade, farming, medicine, astronomy, and daily life. Zara carefully picked up one tablet. "It's a library." Amara smiled. "And every tablet tells the story of a civilization the world forgot." Hours passed as the team documented every discovery. Cameras recorded every room. Scanners created detailed maps. Samples were carefully collected without damaging the city. Suddenly, Captain Idris raised his hand. "Quiet." Everyone stopped. A faint sound echoed through the palace. Footsteps. Not from the expedition. Someone else was inside the city. Captain Idris quietly switched off his flashlight. The team listened. The footsteps disappeared. No one spoke for several moments. Finally, Malik whispered, "We are not alone." Unknown to the explorers, Victor Kane and his treasure hunters had secretly entered the city through the open gate. Hidden among the ancient buildings, they watched the expedition from the shadows. Victor smiled. "So this is the city that legends feared." His eyes fixed on the palace. "Imagine how much gold is hidden here." One of his men looked nervous. "Shouldn't we wait?" Victor shook his head. "No, tonight. We begin taking everything." Far across the underground city, Amara stood on a high balcony overlooking the magnificent streets. She imagined the laughter of children, the busy markets, the ringing of blacksmiths' hammers, the voices of scholars filling the great library. An entire civilization had once lived here. Now only silence remained. She looked toward the palace towers rising beneath the desert. "We found the city," she said quietly, "but I have a feeling this greatest secret is still waiting for us." As the team prepared to spend the night inside the lost city, none of them realized that danger had already entered through the ancient gates. By sunrise, the greatest discovery in history would become a desperate fight to protect it.